If you're living a life in pursuit of truth, then pursuing the truth can't be subject to how you feel about the truth. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. It's episode 25 of Ascension to Depth. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune in on whatever platform you're using, whether it be YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, to Vos Radio. Thank you so much for taking the time to break from your regular programming and come over to the best show on YouTube, best show on Spotify, best show, just period. And I hope that you are well. I hope that everybody is doing all right. And if you missed last week, we talked about influence. We talked about the different influences that we allow into our lives and how we need to be very cautious of the atmosphere around us and how to in turn influence others and a bunch of other great stuff. So if you missed last week, by all means, go give it a listen. Take time. It's 20 minutes. Go listen to that episode. It'll be great. You'll love it, and then you'll hit that like button, and then you'll subscribe, and then you'll throw on a notification bell, and it'll be amazing. And it will be just like this show. It's going to be absolutely amazing show today, because that's all we do here. We only do amazing shows. But we're going to talk about dedication versus consistency today, because a lot of people think that dedication is consistency, that if you're dedicated to something, then you're consistent in that thing, and that's not always true. And so it is great to have dedication, but consistency is needed. But to get us started, we are going to go to a verse that not only gives us instruction, but also a promise and also a warning. And so maybe not a warning, where it more gives us a requirement. I don't want to say that, or take it however you want to take it, actually. So going to Galatians 6 and 9, the Bible says, "And let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not." So I want to begin by defining both terms. I want to define dedication and I want to define consistency. First, we'll start with dedication. Dedication is passionate commitment to a goal or cause, often driven by motivation and enthusiasm. And so dedication is a great thing, but it's often not enough for a long haul. According to the definition, it's a passionate commitment. Oftentimes, dedication is rooted in the emotional drive to do a thing. And I've been to really a lot of great church services, and it's been absolutely life-changing at some of these services, and some of them have gotten me so hyped up in a moment where it's like, we're gonna fight the adversary, and we're all like, yes, and we're gonna go take this city by storm, yeah, we're gonna win everybody over to the Lord, absolutely. And you get really hyped up in this moment, and it's great. And I believe that God uses people to get other people passionate about living for God and doing the work of God. I think that that's absolutely amazing. I wouldn't change that. My life has been changed at many conferences. I know many people who have had their lives changed at conferences and things along that nature. And even just regular Sunday services, when you have a pastor who's really on fire for God and really just bringing the people into deeper and deeper places in God and in His work and in His Word. And it's just absolutely amazing. And you can get fired up just by watching someone be used by God. However, to be honest, in a lot of those church services that I got really passionate about, and to be completely transparent, there have been many church services where I got really passionate about what someone was saying. And I got very, very dedicated to their idea and to the word that God gave through them, and I got really, really dedicated and really, really passionate, but those words didn't hold fast in my life. Not because the person did something wrong, but because I didn't have the mindset to push through the times that I wasn't as passionate as the day I received that word. And so I had a lot of dedication. I did. A lot of people have a lot of dedication, but I think a part of the problem is that dedication is contingent on mindset. A lot of times it's contingent on mindset. And if your mind isn't convinced that this is what you want to do or should do, then your dedication wavers. And so That's why living for God can't be left up to dedication. It can't be based alongside your mindset. It can't be prone to the changes that we go through in our own minds. It can't be dependent on whether or not we think it's a good or a bad idea. Proverbs 16:3 says, "Commit thy works unto the Lord, and thy thoughts shall be established." They shall be established. First, commit your works, regardless of how you feel about something in a moment. If you're living a life in pursuit of truth, then pursuing the truth can't be subject to how you feel about the truth. John 8:32 says, "And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." Truth will make you free, but truth will not always make you happy. A lot of times we have a problem with truth because we've grown comfortable or pleased by our chains or by our mindsets. It's not always chains that hold us back. A lot of times we get really comfortable with our lives. We get very comfortable with the things that we've always known and the things that we've always been taught and the things that we've always clung to. But truth, when it shines a light on the parts of those things that aren't in line with the truth, that aren't in line with what's actually going on, a lot of times we get very upset because we don't want to see our version of the truth seeing the true light of what the truth is. So if we're going to pursue the truth, which is Jesus Christ, because he says, "I am the truth, I am the way," then we aren't going to be able to just live a dedicated life. We are going to need to live a consecrated life. And consecration takes consistency. It's a process. And so let's define consistency. Consistency is the ability to maintain regular, sustained effort over time, regardless of external factors or fluctuating motivation. The most important word in that sentence is regardless. There are going to be a lot of good reasonings as to why going into a deeper relationship with God is too much cost. There's going to be a lot of good reasoning. Maybe not a lot of true reasoning, but a lot of good reasoning that's going to sound good, that's going to make sense, that's going to tell you going into it deeper is just not worth the end result. The cost is not worth what you get. But let's remember that first verse that we read in the beginning, because it says, "In due season we are going to reap, but only if we faint not." It's going to require that consistency, because we're only going to be able to reap if we faint not. Be encouraged not by the ease of the road ahead, because the road is not going to be easy. The trials are not going to be easy. The storms are not going to be easy. However, be encouraged by the person walking with you. Be encouraged that God is walking alongside of you. And then he's going to take you to a place where reaping is possible. Now, also keep in mind that we reap according to what we sow, because it's not enough that we are just walking. There's also a purpose to the journey. There's also things that we must do while on this road. And so we need to keep in mind that we reap according to what we sow, not according to how we felt when sowing or how we felt when walking. Pain does not lead to a harvest. Pain does not lead to prosperity. Sometimes pain is involved in the process of sowing, and sometimes you sow in your tears to then reap in joy. But the pain itself is not what makes you reap. The pain itself is not what brings forth the harvest. However, it does lead to strength. But a strong person who only plants one seed will only see one tree. A strong person can get to the end of the road, but they'll only reap that which they sowed. And so we need to remember that as we are getting stronger, as we are going through pain sometimes, as we're going through this road that we need to be dedicated and we need to be consistent on, there is a purpose in that road, because the person who plants seed after seed after seed after seed, as they're getting stronger and as they're getting closer to God and as they're walking down this path with him, they will get to see the beautiful grove at the end. They will get to reap that harvest that they sowed. And yes, sometimes it was sowed by tears. Sometimes it was sowed with joy. Sometimes it was sowed when you're tired. Sometimes it gets sowed when you're upset. Sometimes it gets sowed when you're happy and when everything is going right. But it doesn't matter the season you're in when you're sowing, as long as you keep sowing and keep going. Because it's about consistency. Even in your own personal walk with God, it's about consistency. I think that we put a whole lot of pressure on ourselves when we say that we're never going to do something again, or that we're always going to do something for the rest of our lives. We need to be very careful when we say things like that. And I'm certain that I've said those things as well. I know that I've said, I'm always going to live for God. I'm never going to turn my back on him. I'm never going to backslide. I'm always going to be in church. I know I've said those things, and those things are great to say. But the thing that we need to focus on is the consistency of it, because big promises like that have no time limit on it. You have no idea when or where it is that God might take you up to heaven and you'll be no longer for this world. But you do know that you're here right now. And so we need to focus on that consistency that says, yes, I intend to always live for God. I intend to always be seeking after him. But I'm going to make sure I do it today. I'm going to make sure that I do it in this moment. I'm going to make sure that this moment gets me closer to God. Faint not, and God will make sure that you reap a harvest. 1 Corinthians 15:58 says, therefore, my beloved brethren, be ye steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. For as much as ye know that your labor is not in vain in the Lord. Now, I want to talk about the role of motivation for a moment, because I didn't say all of that just to get the idea that dedication is bad and consistency is wrong. I hope I made it very clear that we need both. And motivation is a key factor to giving us that initial spark when deciding to go in certain directions. When we decide that, you know what, I'm going to fast, or I'm going to pray X amount of hours a day. Dedication and that spark of motivation is often what starts us on that path. So we need both. And you are going to need to find motivation at times to get yourself and keep yourself in the process. Now, the reason I bring this up is because I believe that these motivations shouldn't be rooted in ourselves. Being able to push yourself is great and it's needed. But if we only do things for ourselves, we're prone to giving in to ourselves. We need motivations outside of us. For example, doing something for a future generation puts a different perspective on the things that you do now. Especially when you're talking about kids, like, oh my goodness, I'm going to have a family later on, so maybe I shouldn't do this because I could be making their future harder for them now. And so putting that type of pressure, if you will, on yourself and having that type of perspective puts a different kind of motivation in you, and it puts a different kind of dedication in you, and oftentimes can lead to more consistency from you. Having that motivation outside of yourself is very, very important because, for example, you would probably train more consistently. You would probably exercise more consistently if you knew you were going to have to protect someone else one day. I mean, let's ask ourselves in a completely practical way, is there anyone in our life that you would go to blows for, that you would get into a physical fight for? Now, ask yourself, are you capable of doing that? Are you capable of surviving that? Are you capable of actually being effective in that? If somebody hides behind you and you say, I'm going to protect you, I'll fight for you, and then what? Are you actually capable of handling that situation? Are you actually capable of fighting for someone that you love, somebody weaker than you, somebody who can't defend themselves? Are you able to do that? And I ask that because we often say that we would do something, and we have it in our heads, we have that motivation, but we don't actually have the dedication or much less the consistency to even prepare for it. And so it's especially important that the dedication doesn't just come from yourself, that the consistency is there regardless of how you feel, that motivation isn't just based on how you want things to happen, how you envision things happening. I can envision a lot of things. I can envision myself being in good shape and being able to be healthy, but if I don't get up in the morning and go exercise, if I don't eat the right things, then I'm not really living out my motivation. I'm not really even proving the motivation that I say is inside of me. And so, especially in the things of God, we need to realize that our motivation is not what is going to get us through. When we develop a relationship with God, we realize how small we are. And in that realization is great humility and also great fear. But we ought to remember in that power comes from God and not ourselves. Philippians 2:13 says, "For it is God which worketh in you both to will and to do of his good pleasure." So make sure your motivations aren't based around you, because at the end of the day, it's God that worketh in you. If you can get your motivations tied to him, something greater and much more vast than you anchor yourself to something that isn't bound to the whims of your own mind and to the feelings of your heart. Rather, you are tied to something that's going to keep you on that path, that you're going to keep yourself going day after day after day, because you have an enormous goal to reach, and because you are getting closer to the one who often requires more of those he gives the most to. And so if we want that, it's going to take more than just saying, I would do that, or I will do that. And it's going to take more than just that initial first few steps. It's going to take being consistent. So really quickly, I'd like to talk about the key differences in dedication and consistency, and then I'd like to touch on some strategies to being consistent. But first, the key differences between dedication and consistency. Number one, short-term versus long-term. Dedication is often focused on short-term goals and bursts of effort. Consistency is about maintaining steady progress over time and over oftentimes a long haul. And so we must remember that both are needed, but dedication gets us started and consistency will get us through to the end. Hebrews 12:2 says, "Wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which doth so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus," not unto ourselves, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. I'm going to read that bit again. Looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross. A lot of times we're going to have to endure something, but we're not doing it because this moment feels good. We're doing it because of the things set before us, the joy set before us, the peace set before us. All the things that God has in store for us, all the things that he has for us is set before us, but it takes us enduring that cross. Which leads into number two of the key differences between dedication and consistency: handling setbacks. Dedicated individuals may struggle when faced with obstacles or failures, but consistent individuals adapt and persist in spite of challenges. Setbacks are coming. Be rest assured of that. In this world you will have tribulation. But James 1:12 says, "Blessed is the man that endureth temptation, for when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life, which the Lord hath promised to them that love him." And the last difference I want to point out between dedication and consistency is sustainability. Dedication can lead to burnout. I know a lot of dedicated people who have burnt out because they're just dedicated. If it's not managed properly, dedication can really get you on fire in the beginning, and you take on thing after thing after thing after thing, and job after job after job after job, and ministry after ministry after ministry after ministry, and then you burn yourself out. If you don't manage the work of God properly like you would any other job, you will often fail. And so consistency involves pacing oneself and maintaining a sustainable routine. I know that we all have fire in us at times. Even in just regular life, you have a lot of fire some days and a little bit other days. And on the days that you have a lot of fire, you take on as many challenges as you can, and you bring those challenges to you because you know that you can take them on. But then the days that you have the little fire, the days that you have little energy, you're stuck with the same load that the you with big fire put on you. And so we have to make sure that our work for God, our work for this world, in jobs and in things for ourselves, are sustainable, not just ambitious, not just great. Now, I think that there shouldn't be a fear of struggle, but at the same time, if you can't do the thing that you're setting out to do, it's not going to get done anyway. If you are burning yourself out, then you're just setting yourself up for failure. And so we need to have consistent and sustainable routines. And I want to get into another bit of that, because we also have to think about what we're doing for God in those times of idleness, when we are trying to figure out what to do next, and we're trying to figure out what we're moving on to. And even in those moments of great ambition, what are we going to be doing in those times of the in-between? Isaiah 40:31 says that, "But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint." And so we love quoting this verse, but part of living life is waiting. Now, here's the thing, is that a lot of times we think waiting is an idle thing. And we often think that waiting on God means waiting for God. But it doesn't say wait for the Lord, it says wait upon the Lord. And so in these times of idleness, if I were to take a bit of linguistic license here, waiting upon someone would be like what a waiter does at a restaurant, not like what we do in waiting rooms at the doctor's office or wherever we may be. We ought to remember that we are here to serve God first and foremost. That whatever ministry we have, whatever things we're involved in, whatever jobs we might have, our first and foremost objective is to serve the one that created us. Because we were made for His pleasure. That's what we were made for. We are made to please Him. And so we need to make sure that our lives do just that. That we, even in those times of idleness, even in those times of we're wondering what to do next, where we're going to go, where's our ministry going to go, where's our job going to go, what's our life going to look like in 5 years, and we're dedicated, and even sometimes we're consistent. And in those times, there are going to be times of idleness that you're not really going to know which way to turn. But make sure that especially in those moments, that you're not getting lost in the job you have or the ministry you're a part of or the craft you have, that all that you are and all that you do is serving the Lord. Lastly, I want to do something very, very quick. I want to go into strategies for building consistency. First strategy will be set clear and achievable goals. Break down large goals into smaller, manageable tasks. Celebrate small wins to maintain momentum. Let's not forget that we do have small victories in our life that we should acknowledge, because those small victories lead to the greater ones. And we wouldn't get the greater ones if we didn't win the smaller ones. And so remember, be consistent and also trust God in those moments of confusion that those small wins might be in. A lot of times we find ourselves facing battles on the way to the battle that we know we're supposed to face. But remember, Psalm 37:5 says, "Commit thy way unto the Lord." The whole way, commit thy way unto the Lord. Trust also in Him, and He shall bring it to pass. Trust in Him. Trust God. Commit the way to Him. So no matter what it is that you face in the way, commit that way to Him. And so second strategy of building consistency is creating a routine. Establish daily or weekly routines that support your goals. Stick to your routine even when you don't feel motivated. And a good example of this would be Daniel. He prayed 3 times a day consistently despite the threats against his life. You can read Daniel 6 for that. It is such a great story. You really read the whole book of Daniel. You'll get so many insights on how to be a consistent Christian and how to be a Christian that walks with God, not just visits God on Sunday and Wednesday, but a Christian that walks with God, that has a consistent relationship with God. We have to do it regardless of how we feel. Third, accountability. Find an accountability partner, join a community with similar goals, track your progress, and stay on course. But having a friend is really, really important. Make sure that you at least have someone that you are checking in with, that's checking in with you to see that you are doing the thing that you said you would do. We've quoted this verse 1,000 times before. Proverbs 27:17, iron sharpeneth iron, so a man sharpeneth the countenance of his friend. You need iron in your life. And then focus on habits. That's number 4. Focus on habits. Develop habits that align with your goals and reinforce consistency. Replace negative habits with positive ones. I've heard it takes about 10 days to break a habit, but we need to make sure that we're not just breaking habits, but we're also replacing them with positive ones. Remember, in the Bible, if you just empty the house and don't put Jesus in there, then more than likely something evil can come back and just bring more evil with it. Because you can clean out the house, make it look all nice, but if Jesus doesn't move in, the adversary is looking for every opportunity to. And oftentimes he doesn't come alone. And so we need to be very, very careful that we replace those negative habits with positive ones. Romans 12:2 says, and be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. Keep in mind it says renewing. It's an active verb there. You are renewing your mind. Not just renew once. Not just be transformed and renew your mind. You're transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Lastly, adaptability. We need to be adaptable when trying to be consistent. Be flexible and willing to adjust your approach as needed. Learn from setbacks and use them as opportunities for growth. Philippians 4:12-13 says, I know both how to be abased and I know how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I am instructed both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me. We are going to need to adapt. We are going to need to be able to look at our circumstance and say, I'm going to adjust to this circumstance, but I'm going to maintain course. Because if we just try to trudge on, then oftentimes our circumstance will hold us back. But if we can adjust, we need to know how to be abased, and we need to know how to abound. We need to know how to be hungry and know how to be full. We need to know how to do these things and continue forward. And so I want to read this last verse here. 1 Corinthians 9, verse 24 says, know ye not that they which run in a race run all, but one receiveth the prize? So run that ye may obtain. A lot of people run the race, but a lot of people don't get to the prize. Don't run for the sake of running. Don't live for the reason of just existing. Live in the intention of living for someone greater than yourself, so that you might obtain that which is greater than life itself. And that's gotta be the best drive ever. You put your faith and your dedication and your motivation into something greater than yourself. And if you do it consistently, you will get to a place that life is so much greater, because now you are going to obtain that which is greater than life. I don't even know if that made much sense, but my point is that heaven is a lot better than this life. Heaven is a lot greater than this life right now. And so if we can keep this consistent pacing, we will make it to heaven. And that will make it all worth it. That'll make the road all worth it. And with all that being said, thank you so much for taking the time to tune into this show. I hope that this episode was encouraging and encouraged you to be consistent, not just dedicated, but you need to be both. I hope that you put your motivations in something greater than yourself. And with that, I will see you all next week. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. God bless you and Godspeed.